Hi, this presentation is in honor of the League of Women Voters of Central Kane County and its annual meeting on May 19th. I'm very grateful to Jean Pierce and the chapter for a chance to talk about Braver Angels to you. I'm Chuck Stone, and I've been the Illinois coordinator for Braver Angels, a volunteer position, for about 3.5 years. And we've had the pandemic and we've had these really tumultuous politics during that time. And now we're in the middle of a primary election season, a very important time. So let's see what we're up to and whether the League and Braver Angels can find ways to defend democracy together by depolarizing our politics and with a special view toward the June 28th primary. So by way of introduction, we have a mutual friend. Our mission at Braver Angels was inspired by Abraham Lincoln. And in his first inaugural speech, he talked about the better angels of our nature and making a choice really for the better angels. And in early 2020, so we called ourselves Better Angels when we formed in December of 2016. And then in early 2020, we changed our name to Braver Angels. And, you know, in all candor, that was partly because of a Ken Burns trademark lawsuit, because he had a Better Angels Society. But we liked the name Braver, and we chose the name Braver because it reflects, first of all, the civic courage that's needed to bridge the divide and to work together, even when we disagree, and to face up to social pressure, which says stay within our own tribes, and to go beyond our comfort level sometimes and do new things to try to solve this problem of widespread alienation, cynicism, and distrust, and to keep pushing and to bet on the American people, even if the problem is complex and our efforts do not immediately succeed. So we're driven by that sense of great alarm, a feeling that our democracy is in danger and that it really needs defending, and that we were on kind of a downward spiral of dysfunction, cynicism about our institutions, which is very dangerous, and a sense of impending political violence. So as you put it at the League, democracy is not a spectator sport. And we have created a vehicle for people to get involved across the political spectrum in actively depolarizing America. So Braver Angels is a nearly all volunteer organization. There's only a few paid positions in the country. And here's a few things. I'm the state coordinator for Illinois. Here's a few things about us nationally. And the first is that we focus on one issue only, and that's depolarizing America. We don't take positions on anything else. Then we adhere to a 50-50 rule of reds and blues in all leadership positions. So on our board of directors, it's a red and a blue all the way across. Convention delegates, it's 50-50. Our alliance chairs, the groups that meet on a monthly basis, there's a red chair and a blue chair. And someday our state coordinators are going to be that we'll have a red chair and a blue chair in Illinois. Right now, it's just me. Then we use family therapy tools, and there's a reason for that. First, it makes sense. We are kind of like a fractured family that isn't talking to each other very productively right now, but we are talking about each other quite a bit. And the reason we were able to imbue our workshops and our techniques with family therapy techniques is that one of our co-founders is Bill Doherty, who's a prominent family and marital therapist at the University of Minnesota. So we're using some of those tools that he uses in his practice. So for example, the picture that you're looking at is actually from a Red Blue workshop in Evanston, Illinois, and it was filmed by the Van Jones Show of CNN back when we were Better Angels a couple of years ago. And what you see is the blue group. This is a fishbowl The blue group is sitting in a ring here in the middle, and the red group is surrounding them on the outside. And the blue group is talking about two things. First, why do you think that your policies and values are good for the country? And then second, what are your reservations and concerns about your own group, your own side? And they talk about it as individuals. The people on the outside just listen, and then we switch places. And what this tends to do by listening is it explodes stereotypes about each other when you actually hear people give their beliefs as individuals. Then we also train experienced volunteers. And what I mean by that is our moderators and our debate chairs are chosen from people who already have experience in facilitating groups. And then we train them in Braver Angels, events, and techniques. So the Braver Angels pledge is, first of all, as individuals, we try to understand the other side's point of view, even if we don't agree with it. In our communities, we engage those we disagree with, looking for common ground and ways to work together. So we purposefully, affirmatively engage, recruit, meet with those we disagree with, looking for common ground and ways to work together. We try to bring people together. And in politics, we support principles that bring us together rather than divide us. So our mission is to build a working alliance between conservatives, liberals, and others to depolarize America. What's new this spring is we're heading in a new direction, an additional direction, Braver Politics. And that's to work on the relationship between elected officials on a board or a body in Congress or on a city council, village council, a school district board, for example. And then also work on the relationship between elected officials and their constituents, and including their staff. We have rules and a structure. So there is a structure to every Braver Angels event, and that structure is enforced by a set of rules that are enforced by trained moderators or debate chairs. So what do we want out of this primary season that has already begun with early voting, other than choosing our candidates? And this is Barbara Comstock, a former Republican Congresswoman from Virginia, at her Braver Angels Forum last month called Congress Fixing Congress. And she was talking about civic courage and public servants who are willing to risk their jobs. But, you know, she says, I think we have to start rewarding good behavior and not rewarding bad or cowardly behavior. If we're going to punish people like Liz Cheney or people who stand up and do the right thing, instead of rewarding them, then you're going to get more of what you don't want and less of what you want. So what do we want? I think it goes beyond picking candidates. I think we also need to find ways to express our feelings about toxic politics and party above country, and find ways to mark the occasion publicly when somebody shows statesmanship and courage. So that's as voters, candidates, and elected officials, we should be thinking about incentives and rewards and disincentives for candidates who intentionally divide us. We should, and really talking about people who live in their own district. And the most effective way may be to talk to our own side when things seem toxic or divisive and we don't like them. We should bring it up to our own side, and also to praise the other side when they show something that we do like. So we can do this not as an official stand of Braver Angels or an official stand of the league, but as individuals. Just call people out on your own side and talk about people doing things right if they do it on the other side. Raise the profile of depolarization as a part of public service. So in line with that, Jean Pierce actually asked a great question. This is about bipartisanship and is it the kiss of death? So she asked if a primary candidate tells voters that they are willing to speak across the aisle, is that the kiss of death in these hyper-partisan times? My answer is, I don't know. But I think that we are going to find out, and we'll find out soon enough. So this is a quotes from a Republican candidate for Congress in Illinois. And we don't endorse candidates, so I'm hesitant to name this candidate for Congress. I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm just using these quotations to show you that we're going to find out, is bipartisan popular or is it the kiss of death at this point in our history? So it says people, he's quoted as, people will have to be willing to step up, even if it's not popular, even if it means losing an election. So that's showing a kind of civic courage, I think. You have to be willing to step up and say, people are sick of the fighting and just want people to come together. Just to be that kind of a voice, no matter what happens. I'm more worried about trying to change myself to win an election than I'm worried about losing. So this gentleman actually decided to run for Congress while sitting in a Braver Politics meeting. He's been very active in Braver Angels. And he's not the only candidate across the country who is openly speaking about depolarization and working with the other side as being an important part of public service today. And he is getting some notice for it. The Springfield Journal Register reported on a candidate forum and saying that he was, quote, the only candidate to describe a desire for bipartisanship, attempting to set himself apart from the other candidates by saying he isn't a, quote, hyper-partisan person who will turn people away. We need to bring people together and get all the votes we can, he said. So Gene and the Kane County League, we're going to find out if that's popular. But it is, I think, a sign of the times that people who say the opposite kind of elect me and I'll go to Congress to not be a legislator, to not work with the other side, to not do the job of bringing people together to pass legislation. I'll be a gladiator and demonize the other side just like you want me to, the few people who vote in primaries and who elected me, rather than partnering on legislation. Those people don't have us wondering about their statements. And it's really that, to me, it's a kind of open statement of promised incompetence in the job of being a legislator, when you think about it. So I think we need to make that the kiss of death in the primary, but we're not there yet. So how do we change our toxic culture to achieve that? And Braver Angels workshops are, again, based on principles of family therapy, and that has been our approach with citizens in the first 5 years of our existence. So we have two kinds of workshops. First, we have workshops that teach communication skills for polarized times. And here's a few examples of that. The depolarizing within is talking to your own side when it goes over the line and begins demonizing and stereotyping. Skills for bridging the divide, of course, is the basic bridging skills. And then families and politics looks at the special dynamics of the family when it comes to talking politics. And then we've got workshops that create experiences that would be difficult for us to create for ourselves. So, for example, we have the red-blue workshops that I mentioned before, bringing together an equal number of reds and blues for a structured day of listening and conversation. We have the alliances, and those are the groups that want to stay together as a discussion group and to further the mission of Braver Angels. We have common ground workshops to bring together people on different sides of an issue to look for something that we often gloss over. Are there points of agreement even among people who disagree, basically? Agreement about concerns, values that come to play, and policies sometimes. And then finally, we have Braver Angels debates, which are unlike any debates you've seen. Everyone in the room is eligible to stand up and give a short speech, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, stand for a couple of questions. And I'm really proud of our college debate program that we bill as a collective search for the truth. So we're getting another generation involved in depolarization. So Braver Politics, Building Relationships, what you're looking at is the House Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress. And last June, Bill Doherty, the gentleman I mentioned before, testified before the committee. And this is the committee. This is Bill. This is the committee chair, a Democrat. Here's the committee vice chair, a Republican. And the committee is made up of 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats. I think of Bill as America's family therapist, and he was part of who's working the controls here? Committee took testimony from experts from several different sources on changing dysfunctional institutions. Now, this is a group within Congress that recognizes that we are currently dysfunctional. They even solicited advice from coaches on sports teams who had been able to turn around a team that had been bad for a long time. So on this day, they focused on methods of incentivizing, again, collaboration and building relationships across the aisle in Congress. And eventually they offered 14 targeted interventions that are very much kind of braver angel-y, of having workshops for the staffs of Congresspeople, for example, and of doing kind of what Bill recommended, which is in the lower right corner, the red-blue workshops, doing them for the staffs, one-on-one red-blue conversations, which are 2 one-hour conversations with a scripted nature that invites people to talk about their life experiences and how it led them to their political beliefs. So a red and a blue congressperson could do that whenever they had time on Zoom. And then Braver Politics town halls, which are different. They bring the common ground workshop focus. Instead of handing a microphone to somebody and having them say, now let me tell you what I really think about you, to the elected official on stage, they have citizens talking to each other from across the divide for the first hour, looking for points of agreement about a particular issue that's, announced in advance. And then, only then, do the elected officials, usually there's a Republican and a Democrat that agree to do this. And in the second hour, they engage with their constituents, both about what they came to agreement about, and then also the things that they could not agree to. So here's the Braver Politics offerings, and I'll run through them very quickly. Some of these are just adaptations of the things that we did with citizens before. Others are brand new. So you see the Skills for Bridging the Divide workshop, the red-blue workshops, the town halls I just mentioned, the structured conversations across divides. And by the way, one of the divides that we offer a scripted prompts for the conversation for is on the urban-rural divide, which is very important, of course, in Illinois. Constituent conversations, and then skills for managing difficult conversations with constituents and colleagues is what that workshop is. And then we're developing something, skills for managing difficult phone conversations, and that's for staff. And that's because so many of our congressional staffs right now are bombarded by really awful phone calls, threatening and demeaning and so forth. We also, we hope to work with all levels of government, again, from school boards to Congress and everything in between. And we'll do what we can to develop our methods and to use them whenever somebody wants to bring us in. We also have a really, really brand new thing, a citizen action program. More about that as it develops, but it includes ways for people to interact with candidates and officials. So I'm really hoping that over time that we can form a kind of working coalition of bipartisan organizations working together on an ad hoc basis whenever possible to incentivize bipartisanship and the stuff that we actually want. So here's one idea about that right away. So how about a social media campaign? And this was first suggested by Gene as an option, Gene Pierce, about the polarizing effect of low voting in primaries. So when it comes to voting, that's all about the league, and the social media campaign won't have any impact without you. This figure is from a group called Unite America Institute, talking about the primary problem. And the problem is, let me explain the arc first. The top arc is the eligible voters in 2020, and there were 235 million eligible voters in 2020. The bottom arc is the number of seats in Congress. And as members of the League of Women Voters, you know the number is 435. The problem is that the most polarized, most extreme ideological people are, many are scared to death of the people on the other side, are way overrepresented among the tiny group of primary voters. So looking at the chart, only 10%, and here's the other part of the problem. Let me add one thing. We have so many non-competitive districts in this country where if you win the primary, you're pretty much assured of winning the election. So the primary is everything, and only this chart shows that only about 10% of eligible voters were responsible ultimately for electing 361 of the 435 seats. In other words, they voted in primaries where the candidate was eventually elected, and it was only 10% of our voters elected 83% of Congress people. So a social media campaign could raise the importance of voting in the primary and could make this connection about the importance. So let's see what we can do. So one way of thinking about where we're at in our divide and how toxic it has become is that we have this new prejudice. You could call it partyism. And unlike racial and religious prejudice, we haven't worked on this yet. We haven't made any progress with it yet. Like racial and religious prejudice, partyism is supported by stereotyping of the other side, and usually of like the worst person we can think of on the other side. So it feels almost like it's okay to discriminate against somebody based on what they believe, if we find their beliefs to be hateful. But in fact, what we're doing is we're discriminating against them based on our stereotype of their beliefs. So like racial and religious prejudice, partyism leads to discrimination and discord. And there is a joint study by Stanford and Princeton that found that this is deeply within us at this point, this kind of prejudice, and we act to disadvantage people on the other side based on our stereotypes. So here's an example. I did a red-blue workshop in Galesburg, and the conservatives at Knox College, and the conservative club was a participant in it. And the kids on that club told me that they had reached out to one of the liberal cause clubs to ask them to just socialize, let's just get to know each other, that kind of thing. And here's what happened. This is what was told to me. They got back an answer from, dear conservative club, we say no. We won't socialize with a bunch of fascist, homophobic misogynists. You don't belong on this campus. And, I've heard the same type of thing from people who work in university settings who are conservative, and they're scared to death to voice an opinion, because if their department head found out that they're conservative, they would be disadvantaged. And I haven't heard it from one person. I've heard it from a handful of people. So there's a growing body of social science research showing that we have this distorted view of the average person on the other side, as though we're seeing them as a reflection in a carnival mirror. We tend to stereotype them as being just like the most, obnoxious, loudest, most aggressive person we see in the news and social media from the other side. And the carnival view, it's that they advocate extreme positions, which make them stupid or crazy or evil. But there's several studies demonstrating that we don't know each other very well. So here's one of the clever ways of that they've discovered this. You take this statement, most police are bad people. So an extreme statement, and then you poll Democrats, and 85% of Democrats disagree with this extreme statement. But Republicans predicted that less than half of Democrats would disagree with that statement. So they are exaggerating the extremism of the other side. Or properly controlled immigration can be good for America. 85% of Republicans polled agreed, but Democrats predicted that 52%, only about half, would actually agree that properly controlled immigration can be good for America. And there was one other finding, and since this is a largely blue group, I'll say it, that Democrats' polarization levels and the amount that they erroneously exaggerate the extremism of the other side, as Democrats, as the level of education goes up, the exaggeration goes up too. They are more wrong than people with lesser levels. And the reason for that could be that either they consume more popular media than other people, which is very polarized right now and showing the extreme cases, but also they are less likely to have friends on the other side who would then be a kind of mediating factor. Okay, so it's worth noting that there are people attacking this bridging, that it's not the right thing to do or shouldn't be done. So here's a gentleman in the New York Times, reach out to Trump supporters. They said, I tried, I give up. So just this theory that I can't do it, so nobody can do it. And what what he was trying to do was convert them in a single conversation, which is kind of ridiculous to hope for. So why can't we just put people together and they'll talk just fine? After all, I've been talking to people all my life. Why can't I just do it? So first is that there is this reflex of polarization, and a reflex is an automatic, mindless thing, like your doctor hitting your knee with a mallet and your leg goes up. And we have that now about polarization. And we have this exclusive focus on differences. When you put people together, they clash about differences. And what happens then? They retreat to neutral corners. They only focus on differences. There is no attempt to find common ground or to do things that show that their relationship matters. It just goes into a fight. And the pattern of clash and retreat happens. And after retreating, you've reinforced for yourself that you can't talk to those people. They're crazy. There's an epidemic of gotcha questions. So we do an exercise where one group prepares questions for the other, and we find time after time that the only questions they come up with are questions designed to teach a lesson to the other side, to herd them into the corner, to show them the foolishness of their positions, that they can't for the life of them come up with a question that just gets the person talking about how they arrived at a position. Then the need to interrupt and counterpoint is a tremendously bad habit that we're all in right now, this reflex, that if somebody says something we disagree with, we got to stop them. There's no such thing as letting them speak their minds and then we answer. We interrupt right away as if there's going to be some huge problem to humanity as we know it if we just let them keep talking. So our structure and our moderators help people listen again instead of indulging our polarization reflexes. So here's some features of the bridging skill. And the prime directive is that you've got to abandon the expectation that you can persuade your conversation partner, and especially in a single conversation. But the paradox is that by establishing your ethos as a respectful, trustworthy person, listening and speaking respectfully, you have a chance to persuade them. You have zero chance of persuading them if you show yourself to be untrustworthy because you keep interrupting and correcting and so forth. The truism is that these skills are based on if you treat someone respectfully and with curiosity, they will answer you respectfully and with curiosity, and you're kind of bestowing a blessing on them that they are worthy of being talked to, that they're competent and worthy. But the reality is, there is no magic wand. This is not going to work with all people at all times. And I've seen people try to dismiss this effort by saying, you mean to say if I talk to Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi, that they will come around to my way of thinking? No, we don't mean that. And you can't reach everybody all the time, but family members, friends, people in your circle that you want to deepen your connection to or heal a connection, absolutely. Okay, so we are trying to keep it real, but how? So in Illinois, we are offering, after we do a skills workshop, we're offering people a follow-up coaching session in a small group with coaches to prepare for a conversation that you would like to have with a particular family member, friend, coworker in mind, a challenging conversation. And the fact is that the coaches of these sessions have found it to be helpful as well, because we're not, well, Bill Doherty, we're not marital and family therapists. So our experience is limited. And by having a reunion of people after their conversation, we get a kind of broader feeling for the types of problems and solutions that can come up. So for example, we heard from a young woman with conservative parents who don't like her liberal politics, and they've kind of given up on talking to her about it. And one of the key skills that we learn is to set a respectful tone for the conversation to overcome this reflex feeling. And she called her father. She came up with a great tone setter. She called her father to say hello. And she mentioned some political event that had happened during the weekend. And she told him, I've been busy. I didn't have time to look into it. Could you fill me in on what happened? And he was only too happy to jump in and give her his version of what happened. And her mother jumped in too. They were both talking about it. And she was able to reflect back using kind of active listening, what they said, and she gave her reaction. And it worked out very well. Or we had a libertarian guy who was having difficult conversations with his brother, who kept lumping him in with, quote, you and your conservative crazies, you and all your lunatic group think, this. And he didn't come up with the answer at the time, but as a group we came up with, he could have said, I know that you've seen a lot of craziness online, and so have I, from both sides, really, but this is me. I sometimes agree with my group. I sometimes disagree with my group, but can't we just talk, you and I, as individuals, and see what we believe? There's nobody else here in this conversation. It's just me, just you. Let's not attack each other for things that we don't even actually believe. So as people who want to engage others actively to bring people together across the divide, the first thing is, how do we deal with triggering moments in conversation? And the second is, how do we delete those things from our own speech patterns? So because we want to be heard too, we want the other person to feel heard, but we also want to be heard. And we do that by not raising things that raise the other person's defenses so they stop listening to us. That's the skill. So people really think that they know how to talk to people, but I recommend the skills workshop as a kind of a refresher, and maybe look at it with a beginner's mind. See what you can add to your repertoire. One more quick look at the Braver Angel, the Red Blue workshops. And just at the bottom, I've done 6 of these in person before the pandemic. We've got them online now. We did 325 of these across the country, and they're my favorite thing that we do. Brings together about 8 conservatives and 8 liberals, usually. And it almost always leads to an expression of surprise. And it's a surprise, first of all, that they like people on the other side. After listening to them, sometimes for a full day workshop, they like them. And that is not what they expected. They find that there is a range of opinion on the other side, and that is not what they expected. That comes as a surprise, because we stereotype people so quickly and so frequently that they're all alike and they all think the same thing. They think just like the worst person I can think of. And they're surprised that we share common values. And the common values very often are about goals for the country or concerns for the country. And the reason this comes as a surprise, there was a study in 2020 during the election campaign, and 80% of Democrats and 80% of Republicans believed that the other side did not have American values. They do not share American values. In other words, they're un-American. They're unethical, they're immoral, and so forth. And this workshop, when you bring people together, tends to explode the stereotypes, and the connection is sort of natural. So one more word about alliances. We now have 2 of them in Illinois. We didn't have any until last year. One is a statewide Zoom alliance, and the other is in the Champaign area, Braver Angels of East Central Illinois Alliance. And they their subtitle for themselves is the Tired of the Fighting Illini, which I think is a great name. So the reason I'm bringing it up is I think the League of Women Voters could form its own statewide alliance, or local chapters could recruit people and form a local alliance. And this is a chance to recruit mainly some conservatives. And I would be happy to help with this if anybody wants to do it. It becomes a kind of semi-permanent group. They usually meet once a month, and they talk about issues. And once they get to know each other, they build a relationship of kind of a civic friendship happens. And then you can really get deeper into issues, and you trust each other. And they also work on the mission of depolarization, which I think is so intertwined right now with defending democracy. So if I can help with any of that, I would love to help. So please contact me. So, all right, invitation to action, main action, please visit our website, www.braverangels.org. We've got it's a pretty good website, I've got to say. You can become a member for only $12 a year. And I think of that as being kind of betting on the American people. You can also, if you want to find out about us, search YouTube under Braver Angels, and you'll come up with all kinds of debates and forums. We had a great forum on friendship and polarization, and then attend an event. And these are all free. The debates are free. The workshops are free. The forums are free. You can just as easily attend an event on Zoom from North Carolina as you can from where I'm broadcasting from in Chicago. And please contact me at any time. That's what I'm here for. I would love to talk to you. I always love to talk to anybody from the League of Women Voters, and many of our most active people are also active in the League of Women Voters. And that is about it. let me end my remarks with a hopeful note from Rebecca Solnit, who is one of my favorite writers. She's an essayist, and it's in praise of action, because whatever we see in the coming year, however it comes out in the coming 2 years, we're going to have some difficult politics. That's a given. And we're going to have some difficult times for defending democracy, but nobody's leaving this effort no matter what. So we need to get better at defending it. And here's what Solnit says. To me, the grounds for hope are simply that we don't know what will happen next, and that the unlikely and the unimaginable transpire quite regularly, and that the unofficial history of the world shows that dedicated individuals and popular movements can shape history and have, though how and when we might win and how long it takes is not predictable. So during this primary season, I think we are only limited by our imaginations as to finding ways to register the behavior that we want and what we don't want from our fellow citizens, candidates, and officials. And we also need to imagine ways to partner with each other, the League and Braver Angels, but also to partner with all of the nonpartisan groups in Illinois that are or should be on a common mission of defending democracy. So I'd like to thank you, President Pierce, President Steele, and the Central Kane County chapter for inviting me and for lighting the way forward by your well-organized, powerful, and energetic efforts to support our democracy. I don't think any group like Braver Angels can succeed in Illinois without your leadership and partnership. At Braver Angels, we usually leave a meeting with a sign of approval, and that's, jazz fingers, because we spend just so much time on Zoom right now. So thank you to the League of Women Voters for leading the way for 100 years, for helping to write this new chapter in the American experiment. And I'm going to leave you with a song, I hope, that won the Braver Angels songwriting contest. Now, give me a second to put this up here. Hang on. Give me 2 seconds to put this up here. Hang on. So this is the winner of a songwriting contest for Braver Angels. It is Donna, Elaine Miller, and John Baker. So I hope that you enjoy it.
It's not black, it's not white, it's not wrong, it's not right, it's not red, it's not blue, it's just me and you. It's not rich, it's not poor, somewhere in the middle is the open door. If our points of view don't quite see eye to eye, well, that's all the more reason why we need a United States of humanity. We need it, we need it. The United States of humanity, the sum of every part. We need a United States of humanity. We need it, we need it. Resolutions in a revolution of the heart. We're living in a great divide. This fear of each other is our suicide. I believe love's gonna keep us alive, but only if we decide. We need a United States of humanity. We need it, we need it. The United States of humanity, the sum of every part. We need a United States of humanity. We need it, we need it. Resolutions in a revolution of the heart. It's not just the conversation, it's the listening. It takes every voice feeling heard to let freedom ring. We can solve our future here revolution of the heart. Oh, we hold this truth to be self-evident. I have a dream, a United States of humanity. We need it, we need it. We hold this truth to be self-evident. I have a dream, a United States of humanity. We need it, we need it. A United States of humanity. We need it, we need it. A United States of humanity. We need it, we need it now. Resolutions in a revolution of resolutions in a revolution of revolutions in a revolution of the heart.